Greetings, mortals. Thou knoweth me not, but I am known as J, creator of obscure folly that existeth merely as tricks of delight, illusions to be tinkered with for pleasure. Video games. Anyway, of these so-called video games, a favourite genre of mine, after platform games of course, would have to be the humble shmup, or shoot 'em up for people who don't actually confuse these things with first-person shooters. I've been wanting to make one for a while, and so has my partner Harry, who is a fantastic artist and has been wanting to work on a game or three with me. And we'd spoken of a collaboration for a while, but never really had the excuse to do anything about that. Until Bullet Hell Jam. In general, I'm sworn off game jams until my games Quickly Quackly and Neko Necro are finished. One exception would be the upcoming Game Maker's Toolkit Jam, which I am only doing if I love the theme when it is announced. But due to my wanting to make an old school arcade shooter with my partner, as soon as I heard about Bullet Hell Jam, it too became an exception because yes, let's do this. Another thing I've wanted to do for a while is to work with an artist. That may sound confusing because, well, I don't know if you know this, but I can draw and all that. But for me at least, generating the visual assets for games is probably the single most time-consuming part of the entire process, and if I had someone I could trust to do a good job working on the visuals of a game, that would free up a hefty chunk of time I could instead use to focus on the real passion I have for game development. The actual game design, balance, mechanics, systems, all the small stuff that combines to make the fun. The two of us had brainstormed a tiny bit before the theme was announced and did enter the jam with a few of our own pre-existing ideas. I, for example, wanted to make a system based on enemy proximity, where destroying an enemy would yield more points if the player is closer to them, promoting more risk-reward gameplay. And Harry wanted to draw and animate spooky things. The rest of our ideas would have to wait until the jam's theme dropped. In anticipation, I started working out how to do bullet hell patterns just in case, whilst I waited for
the theme.
10 seconds. As two of us were working on this thing, we had two separate takes on the theme that seemed to work against each other. The obvious one, and this was probably mine, was a 10-second charge laser as a secondary mechanic that could be used to wipe out a screen full of nasty. But also, we came up with a non-obvious take on this theme, which would be that 10 seconds of holding down the fire button would kill the player, so they'd have to break it up. I think this was Harry's, and he was concerned it might not work with the other mechanic until I thought about that proximity thing I wanted to do, and how it could not only grant more points, but heal a player damaged from firing. Oh yeah, we were excited about this jam.
The team.
Given that Harry would be generating the art and I'd pretty much be doing everything else, I wore an unusual hat, so to speak, for this jam, director/producer. To this end, my first task would be to itemise the visual assets I required from my artist, and we'd draw up a timetable for when the work needs to be done. I never do this as a solo developer because I pretty much improvise an as and when needed approach as I work, which simply would not cut it when working with other people. As a teenager, I dreamed of being the head creative guy, TM, of a game development studio, and here I was living that dream. Kinda. With Harry now informed of what was required of his skills, I felt like the project was in safe hands, at least visually. I drew up my own timetable so we could synchronise our respective workflows, and whilst Harry drew the player sprite, a thing I'd prioritised at the top of the list for my own reasons, I set to work on making, well, a playable set of placeholder squares that did their thing.
The routine.
It's not unusual for me to start a game by making Square Fred jump around Squaresville, and this project was no exception. Firstly, I got a 5-level weapon upgrade path sorted out as I hadn't really done much like that before. Some basic enemies, a less basic enemy with a bullet pattern, all in placeholder square form whilst my artist drew the player bat sprite, which I wanted first and foremost so I could start working out the proximity system as soon as possible. As I worked on everything but the art, I constantly tweaked as I played and tested. This is what my main task would be, after all. I wanted the thing to be fun and rewarding, and if this bat sprite would reflect the overall quality of the visuals Harry produced, I felt I'd have my work cut out for me in ensuring the rest of the project met this same ridiculously high standard.
The scheme.
It ended up not being quite as simple as Harry draws the art, I do everything else, because actually there were some visual elements that perhaps I had better experience with and maybe better suited to. I would therefore handle some of the more esoteric visual elements common to games of this sort. handling the typeface used for scoring and later the bullet types and explosion animations, which is fine, share the work. Part of being in charge of a team project, as I now was, is to be able to reallocate resources like this. If one member can't do a particular thing, find one who can. Or at least, I'd think so anyway. As Harry set to work on the various enemy types, things like collectible gems and the graphics for the 10-second charge beam, I implemented them when I wasn't doing other under the hood things. Honestly, this project went so smoothly, almost entirely without problems, that I've been frightened of this video being actually quite boring. Please enjoy this piggy I drew for you.
The Dream.
I worked on gameplay for the most part, and the systems that would make it all come together as Harry steadily completed his asset list, mostly on schedule. Both of us, in that regard, pretty much without drama or incident. I have historically not worked very well with other people, as evidenced by my previously having completed very few actual projects that I had worked on with others sadly, and this was the complete and total opposite of any prior experience. We had our timetables, we had our lists to complete, we worked harmoniously, almost as one. Harry would generate all the enemy art, and I would do the rest. We went for the longest time without backgrounds, but this was not a worry in the slightest. We also went without sound as well, which was my area. But each of us had allocated 2 entire days to our respective time-consuming areas here, and we were working absolutely to schedule.
The Scream.
No, nothing horrific happened, I'm just running out of rhyming subtitles that fit the topic. Later than I would have liked, I started to make the game look like an actual game with menus and such, although I was very busy with the main mechanics. But I was also kinda scared that the game was ending up maybe a little too difficult for the average jam participant rating the game, so I made the default game mechanics into a hard mode of sorts named Cursed, and provided an easier normal mode that didn't drain the player's health if they shot continuously without a break. Thus, no need to proximity heal using the Bat's vampirism. You know, cater for those people who just want to hold down the fire button and pew pew pew. It was at this point where Harry was cranking out enemy animations at a frightening speed. Faster, in fact, than I was implementing them. Probably because I'd spent some time doing enemy and player bullets, explosions, and all other visual stuff Harry was too busy for. But yeah, the game was looking like a game alright.
The Scene.
When Harry's background art started to roll in, oh hell yeah, that was exciting. The more he drew, the better the game looked. The more fun it was to test, the harder I tried to make the fun factor match up to this standard, and so forth. At this point, Harry wasn't just drawing assets, but offering feedback on how I was implementing them. Stuff like rearranging the heads-up display, recoloring my explosion sprites to better match the aesthetic he was creating. That kind of thing. The process had become a very two-way affair in the best possible manner. I also worked on music and sound effects as Harry's background art rolled in. I became quite anxious about us getting this made on time though, but where I'd tell Harry that drawing only one of his planned backgrounds would be enough, he assured me that he'd be able to get them done in time. 3 of them. His work extended to the menu presentation, and so on, as I continued work on the last few enemy types, the boss, etc, etc. This came at a price though. So passionate about this project were we, that our work hours on it were creeping higher and higher. Most of the week was spent working on this game for 10 to 12 hours of creative tunnel vision on both ends every day, and we were starting to feel the burn. The game didn't even have a name until late, when I looked up the Latin for cursed and found Maledictus. Awesome. Even better was the offer from a friend with an amazing deep voice to do some voice work for added polish. Welcome to the team, Steve. There were other things we wanted to do, such as tweaking the bullet colours for better clarity and an all-important pause function with restart, but didn't manage to do so. For after 7 days of such intense work, we were exhausted and ready to submit with just over an hour left on the clock. We ran out of time.
And nuts. I also ran out of rhymes.
That's basically it. I've kinda undersold the amount of thought I put into the game's mechanics from what I've noticed over the years of playing shmups and bullet hell games, but honestly, I could do that in another video if I get requests in my comments section. I wanted to showcase my most successful collaboration to date, my first bullet hell game, and something I'm very proud of with Maledictus. Working with my partner Harry doing 99% of the art has been a blissful experience. He really made this game shine, where I tried to make it sing. And hopefully we've done both. Where I know for sure it looks damn good, hopefully it plays the part too. Links in the description. Hope you enjoy this thing we have made together. I know we have, and we'll be rolling out a post-jam version with some fixes and tweaks we didn't initially have the time for. And if you do enjoy it, I know a certain talented artist who wants to work on this further and make a full game of it. What do you think? Can't argue with that, can I? I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. We've reached the end of my video. If you would like to be a great friend and just ring my bell or give me a thumbs up or subscribe, you know how the algorithm works. Thanks, goodbye, stay beautiful.